If a group of people got together and said, we really want to create an authentic replica of the Shroud, matching its chemistry and physics, this would be your biggest challenge of all. You have to figure out a way to change single electron bond carbon atoms to double electron bonds without touching the cloth with any man-made object. Using radiated energy, electromagnetic or charged particle radiation. But the linen shroud, the Shroud of Turin, is made of linen flax, mostly made up of single electron bond carbon atoms, and it produces this color, which is white. Note the arrangement of the electrons on the outer shell of the atoms. That is what determines the color of any object. And this particular arrangement produces the color white. However, if you change that, if the arrangement on the outer shell of the electrons that make up any substance are altered, it changes the way that substance, that material, it changes the way it absorbs and reflects light and thus imparts a new color to the molecules. This particular arrangement produces what? The color of sepia or bronze. And that's what we see on the Shroud of Turin. It's a double electron bond. Notice there are two pairs of electrons here and one here. But that change in the arrangement of the electrons on the outer shell of the atoms changes the way, it changed the way the linen flax absorbs and reflects light, thus imparts a new color to the linen flax with that change. So anyone that says, well, so-and-so faked the shroud, so-and-so made a replica, and that replica underwent forensic scrutiny. Is there anyone that's ever changed single electron bonds to double electron bonds without touching the fabric with anything? Able to penetrate a 15 micrometer diameter linen flax fiber, only 1 or 2 micrometers, and alter the carbon atoms in that? No way. There is no replica of the shroud that has ever accomplished this, with one exception. Guess who did that? Guess who did accomplish that? This guy right here. Paolo di Lazzaro tried for 5 years to replicate the shroud image and concluded that it was produced by UV light, but the UV light necessary to reproduce the image exceeds the maximum power released by all UV light sources available today. The time for such a burst would be shorter than 1/40 billionth of a second, and the intensity of the UV light would have to be around several billion watts. See, he was able to produce, by firing an argon fluoride laser at a specific frequency and a specific power of UV light aimed at one of these fibrils, he was able to get this change. He was able to change single electron bond carbon atom groups to change to double electron bonds without touching the fabric with any man-made object, but using radiated energy. That is how this image was produced. But there's no escaping that during the image process, the body is levitated between the two halves of the cloth. Now, this is a much more accurate position of the body during the image process. The knees are raised and the upper torso is leaning forward. And because of that, because there's separation, a lot of separation between the knees and the feet did not image at all. There's nothing, there's no image there. That's because it's too much separation. When the charged particle radiation or electromagnetic radiation emitted from this body, when it had to travel that extra distance, it slowed down by inverse square law and was not sufficient to do what? To change the single electron bond carbon atoms to double bond. Does anybody really think a group of people back in some medieval times said, you know what, let's rearrange the electrons, the carbon atoms in this linen flax. Let's change them to double bond instead of single electron bonds. There's no way of escaping the fact that to produce the image that we see on the Shroud of Turin, on the mantle of Jesus, you need a dead body. You need a dead, scourged, and crucified body. You need a long sheet of fine linen, and you need to levitate that body in between the two halves of the cloth, levitated between the two halves of a long sheet of fine linen. And you're going to figure out a way, how can we get this dead body that we got here levitated between the two halves of this cloth, how can we get it to emit several billion watts of power for less than a billionth of a second? So that we can get a ghostly, photonegative, X-ray holographic image of Jesus on linen. I don't think so. This evidence, this tells us there is a higher power intelligence involved in the image process. Something beyond our understanding. This is an image that was produced by radiated energy coming out of a dead body. But dead bodies don't emit. Dead bodies don't emit several billion watts of power. If so, it would be a living body. Only a living body could emit several billion watts of power. Well, the Shroud of Turin tells a story of a dead body that becomes a living body. Dead body, living body. What would we call that? Anyone? Raise your hand. Resurrection. Bingo. When you have a dead body that can levitate and also emit several billion watts of power, what does that mean? That means that body's not dead anymore. That's what it means. That's what the forensic evidence, that's the story the forensic evidence tells us on this cloth. The Shroud of Turin is made from a flax plant, a living plant, with protection and defense mechanisms built into its DNA. So when that intense radiation made contact with those fibrils, it formed double bond to hold the carbon atoms together. We're under radiation attack. Form a double bond or we're going to break apart.